Well, I appreciate everybody coming today. When I was asked to give a talk about courage, I was like, wow, I don't know what to do. And Cody said, can you keep it, maybe talk personal stories of courage? And I'm not comfortable with that. I think talking about one's own courage is being braggadocious. And I think, for me, it's just stuff I do. And perhaps I'll dwell. Sorry. Now is it working? Yeah. Yes. I'm not really good on mics either. So I thought maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the theory of courage and then try to get some involvement from everybody to speak about what their thoughts are on courage. And I'm going to throw out a lot of synonyms, and I'm going to throw out some definitions, and I hope it's going to be thought-provoking. So without further ado, we'll jump into it. This is the... creativity takes courage for sure. You think about some of the creative people, through the millennial. You have to step up, and I think that this room is primarily a creative room. Creative people are where I'm most comfortable. I think a lot of my career may have been about business, but if I could really speak on a humble perspective, I just like to be creative. It's funny, my business partner, Uli Becker, recently asked me, what do I want to be in our company? Because I clearly do not want to be the CEO. I said, I want to be the Chief Inspiration Officer. And he laughed. And I used a curse word followed by you. And I said, no, that's what I want to be. And it's because I just want to inspire and I want to have great culture. That's what's super important to me. So this is just a little, I'm going to play this for a few seconds. I think it's pretty appropriate.
What makes a king out of a slave? Courage. What makes the flag out of mast to wave? What makes the elephant charge his tusk in the misty mist or the dusky dusk? What makes the muskrat guard his musk? What makes the sphinx the seventh wonder? Courage. What makes the dawn come and thunder? What makes the Hottentot so high? What puts the ape in apricot? What have they got that I ain't got? Courage, you can say that again.
We're going to get back to the lion again, because I think there's an important story. As anybody that's watched The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorite movies, and also whenever I hear the word courage, instantly the image of the lion comes in my head. It's absolutely the first thing I think of when I hear courage. Shows you kind of where I was as a child, but anyway. I also want to reflect on today, if it was a coincidence of what today is. There's a lot of courage today. Good Friday. So I think that I apologize. I get really passionate when I speak, and it get emotional. So I think that today we should reflect on the courage that, regardless if you believe or not, I think it was a courageous day in humanity. I love this quote, and if anybody hasn't read Winston Churchill quotes, I think you should read them. They're just fabulous. I can read them all day long. I wish I knew more about he as a person. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. So I think we have that dynamic going on today. I'm standing up and speaking, and you guys are sitting down and listening. And I think that listening is probably the more important part. I think as a whole, Americans aren't great listeners, and we need to listen a little bit better and more intently. Again, anytime I ever do a project, I go right to the Google machine and I start looking for definitions. And since courage was the topic, I looked up the definition of courage. And what was interesting to me is there's two distinct courages. And I think that's important to recognize. Firstly, there's physical courage. We all probably know what physical courage is. It's getting on your mountain bike and going off of a cliff or climbing a mountain. That's physical courage. But the one that I think maybe we should focus on is the moral courage. It's the courage to stand up and do what's right. And I think the environment that we're currently in is one that needs to be recognized, and people need to stand up. An old phrase that that I've kind of been popping around in my head for the last month or two, and I'm not certain if I am going to quote the phrase exactly correct, but it goes something like, if you're not doing something about the problem, you are the problem. And I think that's really important. I think, we have to stand up, and we've seen a lot of kids standing up lately to what they think is right. We see the Women's March and people standing up, and I think that's great. It's time for people to stand up and speak loudly. You get heard when you have the masses, and I think it takes courage to be the leader, and I believe that hopefully everybody stands up for what they believe in. Furthermore, I learned that courage is a virtue. So I thought, let's talk about virtue. And the definition of virtue is essentially these dynamics of being a good person. And so let's go through the 25 virtues and think about them for a moment. Honor. I think it is important to honor and respect when you're in conversations and with people. Courage comes up secondly as one of these virtues, and we'll speak more about it. Compassion. I think we have to be more compassionate as people, and we should look at this virtue and try to practice being better at it. Respect. We don't have to respect everything, because not everything deserves respect. Respect is something that you have to earn. And I'm sick and tired of being told to respect certain offices because that's the way it is to be an American. People have to earn respect, and it might be my personal respect that has to be earned or a group's respect. But I do think it's a good virtue, and when you have a good relationship, it becomes respectful. Loyalty. This is one that, gosh, I could talk the entire talk about loyalty, because loyalty is very odd to me. What I have found, and this is something that happened in my career, and I'll speak to it just a little bit. I'm kind of bound legally not to speak about it a whole lot. But certain people demand loyalty. And I think that's good to be loyal for a good cause, but to demand loyalty for something that's not right, it really bothers me. And, right now we have a person in charge of a lot of people that demands loyalty, and he gets rid of people that are not loyal to him. We got to stand up. And in my career, and I'd rather not talk directly to the, what business it was. I was a whistleblower. I was a whistleblower to a person who demanded loyalty. And I gave that loyalty for years, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And it caused me to die inside, because I knew I wasn't doing the right thing. I wasn't doing the right thing for myself as helping to lead this company, and I wasn't doing the right thing for the hundreds of people that worked for the company. So I decided to make a change, and perhaps it's the most courageous thing I've ever done. Perhaps it's the stupidest thing I've ever done. But it's something, when asked, would you do it again? Yeah, probably. It's caused great difficulty for me and my wife. It's been 5 years of living hell. It's been lawsuits. It's even caused a physical attack to a family member. And there wasn't a whole lot of reward for it, other than freeing some people and allowing them to prosper. Of course, I shouldn't look for reward in it, and I really don't. But it was something that was very difficult to do, but it was the right thing to do. And I think everybody should have that once in their life. Do the right thing, and hopefully you can continue to do the right thing. Honesty. Honesty goes without saying. I mean, we got to be honest. We got to be honest with each other. We've got to be honest with our spouses. We have to be honest with our coworkers. Honesty gets the ball forward. Prudence. Being prudent. I think that's, again, another good virtue. Grace, Andrew's wife's name. Grace, do things gracefully. Do things pretty. Let's be creative. Forgiveness. Yeah, we got to forgive. You got to walk away from things and move forward. So again, I think a very important virtue. Humility. That's the one I'm working on the hardest. We've got to humble ourselves. I hit 50 years old 6 years ago. I think 6 years ago, 7 years ago maybe. lost track of age. And I wanted to be more humble. Stop talking about myself and start talking about other people. Start helping other people. And frankly, the biggest reward in my life right now is hanging out at CoLab and meeting lots of people like I have met in this room and seeing what they can do and seeing where their creativity can take them. I'm done. It's time for me to give back. It's not time for me to take anymore. Authenticity. A lot of what I'm using today isn't very authentic. People have seen it. A lot of it came from dictionaries and Google. But I think, authenticity is important, or at least if you're not being authentic, let people know hey, I borrowed this from somebody. Excellence. If you can't do it excellently, don't do it at all. There's a great poem that's been used by a few people. I've shown it a couple of times in some talks that I've done by Charles Bukowski, So You Want to Be a Writer. If you haven't read this poem, or I'd actually encourage you to watch it on video because it's more powerful spoken than it is reading it. But it's about courage of being a writer and doing things excellent. That's the only way to do it. Kindness. Wow, kindness is so important to me. As some people here know, I'm a big Grateful Dead fan. And why do I like the Grateful Dead? I like their music, but it's a really kind group of people. That's what it's about. I remember for years, my daughter would go to me to shows. My wife had no interest. She was, listening to Top 40 and that's it. So my daughter always went. And at one show, my daughter looked over at me and she goes, "You know why I come to these shows with you?" And I said, "No, you like the music, hang out, we dance." And she's like, yeah, I like all that. She goes, "It's the only time I get to see George." And that was powerful to hear that from her. Because I was caught up in wearing a white shirt and a tie every day, and I wasn't the person I wanted to be. But when I went to the shows, George came out, and I was happy. So that night I went home and told my wife about that, because it was really touching to me. And my wife, from that day on, my daughter never went to a show with me again. And not that it was because my wife went to the shows with me. And I remember taking her to the first show at Red Rocks. People coming up hugging me, and she's like, "How do you know all these people?" I said, "I don't." I said, I know them when I'm here. It's just who we are. And, my wife used to bitch to me about playing Dead on the radio. We would go to the beach on Saturdays, and it's an hour-and-a-half drive. And she goes, "We only listened to 2 songs over this hour and a half." And, and then post her starting to go to shows with me, I started seeing her tapping her foot and starting to sing some of the words. She got it. And if you haven't been to a show, I encourage you to go see a show sometime. It doesn't matter. You can go see Dead and Company, John Mayer, a little bit more pop sound, but it's a special group of people. Another thing about kindness, what you want to know is, are you kind? Grateful Dead. Gratitude. I mean, we have a lot to be thankful for. Some people more than others, but I think you have to show that gratitude in any project. You should be happy to be part of a great company and adding things and watching something grow. Patience. I remember patience is a virtue. Not for me. I'm not a very patient person. I get mad in my car. I get mad online. But I'll work on it. Commitment. You got to be committed. If you're not committed, get out. I mean, why spend your whole life doing what you don't want to do? And I think it takes courage to form a commitment, and it also takes courage to break a commitment. So I think it's important, to be committed. Tenacity. Be tenacious. Have that drive to do it. Every morning, jump out of bed with fire, go to sleep at night tumbling in bed because you're thinking about waking up the next morning. Tact. I think we have to, much like grace, we have to be tactful. Generosity. Maybe generosity can't happen financially because you're just not able, but generosity can come in many ways. It can be helping somebody, at the soup kitchen. It can be getting up and supporting Creative Mornings. But be generous. Be generous with your time, and there'll be different times in your life where you can be more generous, but look forward to those times when you can be more generous. Empathy. Empathetic. read into people, see if they're hurting, and help them. Be empathetic to a need. We're all marketers here. I think, what is marketing? Marketing is solving a need and executing on it. And I think empathy is a big part of that. You can't contrive what you think people need. You have to read into them and understand their feelings in order to give them what they want. And I think, when you're being creative and you're trying to promote a product, a thing, a service, I think empathy is a very, very important virtue to be able to understand. Contentment. I don't know if it's good to be content, but maybe it's nice to be happy with what you have. I tend to never be happy. I just always want to go, more. So, it's a virtue, but it doesn't work for me. Assertiveness. Assertiveness, to a degree, I think is very important. Be assertive in what you believe in. Don't waste your time and effort on things that aren't important. Cooperative. We got to work as a team. There's no one person that knows it all. I haven't been the best at being cooperative. As a leader, I've learned that I would listen to other people's ideas and I'd say, yeah, that's a good idea, but we're going to do George's idea, and I would say that over and over again. And many times I was wrong. And you have to learn how to cooperate. And part of cooperation is being empathetic, being able to listen, so that you can understand why we're moving the ball forward. Adaptability, same thing. Be able to adapt. Things change. And then finally, integrity. Live life with integrity, that's all. So I'm going to flash some words. When I was looking up the definition of courage, there were a lot of synonyms for the word. And I always, the thesaurus is one of my favorite things because I try to use words to make me look smart. And the word that the dull word starts out, and then I look for the really, esoteric word. So what I'd like you to do is, as I flash these words, think of a picture, the first thing that pops into your head. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to show you what popped into my head from pictures. And I think a picture tells a story. So we got heroism, adventuresomeness, fearlessness, daring, grit, guts, backbone, tenacity, audacity, valor, bravery, power, fortitude. Everybody got them? So move up, determination is another one, and nerve. Ooh, go backwards. I don't like this thing. I just blew my whole presentation. Heroism. Whenever I hear the word hero, I think of 9/11. I remember that blue sky day, driving from upstate New York to Philadelphia to do a presentation, listen to Stern on the radio. If you're from New York, you listen to Stern, just get over it. And Stern's, a plane just crashed into the towers, and I'm like, he's just joking. And then you knew it was serious. And of course, being from that area, you spent days watching the news about it and hearing the stories, but look at these heroes. I mean, going into the face of death, selflessness, just that. So in my eye, that's heroism. Adventuresomeness. Some of those that know me closely, I enjoy a good adventure once in a while. I used to be a climber. I don't look like a climber, so I'm not a climber anymore. But I still ski pretty hard and mountain bike and things like that. But you look at Alex Honnold on that picture. I mean, clearly he's got some courage, crazy courage, but he's got courage. Fearlessness. I like this image popped into my head. It's these colonials that came to our country that had the courage to make a change and fight an army, not knowing what was on the other side, freezing to death. Again, courage. Daring. Dean Potter. Dean Potter's not with us anymore because his courage brought him a little bit too far. But pretty daring. I mean, he's not tied in there. And clearly you can see where those trees are. It's a long fall. Guts. Yeah. Those of us that are married, it takes guts. Grit. I don't know. I guess grit comes in, I think of John Wayne, True Grit. But he was a gritty, courageous guy. And it was in a time when I think things were nicer. So when you saw John Wayne, that was the definition of courage, and we could all fantasize about the courage that he had. Backbone. Yeah, I don't even need to say anything about this one. Tenacity. I mean, let's find the cure for cancer. And let's be tenacious about it. It takes courage. You may not ever find it. You may work 50 years and you only, push the ball forward a little bit. But be tenacious. We're all part of this. Audacity. When I thought the word audacious, I thought of Elon Musk. I mean, putting a freaking car in space with, it's pretty audacious. And clearly the guy thinks big. Valor. Valor, to some degree, is it the reward for being courageous? I don't think anybody does anything to get an award. They do it because they're courageous. But valor being a synonym. Power. Wow. Bravery. Fortitude. What does it take? To me, it took fortitude to get through college because I was a lousy student, but I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to learn how to get through 4 years of school and scrape to get by and go night after night without eating because I didn't have enough money. But that was, I guess, fortitude for any other reason. Determination. What's the spider thinking when he puts this intricate web together? Nerve. My favorite slide. It's kind of the way I feel today, getting up in front of the mic. But yeah, have some nerve to do what you want to do or do something that's uncomfortable. So I'm going to show this last clip, but I want you to listen to what it said. I think the wizard had some pretty good advice here. And I think that the moral of the Wizard of Oz is quite good. And I'm sure there's been college courses that dissect this movie over and over again. But
once a year they take their fortitude out of more balls and parade down the main street of the city, and they have no more courage than you have. They have one thing that you haven't got: a medal. Therefore, for meritorious conduct, extraordinary power, conspicuous bravery against wicked witches, I award you the Triple Cross. You are now a member of the Legion of Courage. Shucks, folks, I'm speechless. That's for you.
I think what it's saying, don't mistake, wisdom for courage. Wisdom takes a big part of it, and the lion was wise. I like this quote by Nelson Mandela as well. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Yeah, I think that's so important. A saying for climbers is there's a lot of old climbers, there's a lot of bold climbers, but there's not a lot of old, bold climbers. And I think that's kind of balances it. We've got to use our minds when we're going into something and understand that courage can have repercussions. And I think many courageous things that we do will follow you for life. I sat with a guy yesterday, as I do often. If I buy a lot of coffee and sit in the camp house a lot with young people that are entrepreneurs just to hear their story. This guy yesterday, he had a sunglass company, and he was talking to me about it, and he told me he's an extreme athlete, and what he's big in is parachuting, and he cratered about 6 months ago, 200 feet, no chute at all, and lived. When he told it to me, I could see his eyes just welled up in tears, and I'm like, how? He said, I don't know. He's able to jump again in July, and he will jump again in July. So he's got the courage to go back at it. But pretty wild to you know, I talked to a miracle yesterday. I mean, it just, he actually said he's the only person ever to break this certain bone and not be paralyzed or something like that. I don't, you know, I'm not a scientist. It's ever happened. It's never been reported. And I mean, he looked as good as, you know, anybody. I mean, he was fine. He looked fine. He showed me some scars, but he looked fine. And you know, clearly something powerful was taking care of him. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.